morning, it's Saturday the 19th of February. Welcome to GMTV. Serbian guns surrounding the Bosnian capital Sarajevo are due to be pulled back from the area later today, 24 hours before the NATO deadline expires. But NATO forces are still on standby to carry out the threat of airstrikes if the Serbs don't remove all heavy artillery from the area by midnight tomorrow night. This from Jane McCormick.
News that the Serbs intend to remove heavy artillery ahead of the NATO deadline came as Russia announced its intention to send in its own troops to boost the UN forces around Sarajevo. After talks with the Russian Deputy Foreign Minister and the UN, the Bosnian Serb leader Radovan Karadzic said the guns would be moved by midnight tonight. Artillery trapped by snow will be handed over to UN control.
I am very hopeful that we are approaching very good model, first of all to relax situation in the region of Sarajevo and then probably to implement it throughout Bosnia.
If the Serbs comply with the ultimatum, the threat of airstrikes will be greatly reduced. But there are fears that the pullout merely enables the Serbs to concentrate their forces elsewhere. Though the British UN commander, Sir Michael Rose, welcomes the Sarajevo peace plan, he's pushing for it to be extended to the whole of Bosnia.
Because the people of this town want peace, and what is happening at the moment is their leaders are giving them peace.
Russia, which is opposed to airstrikes, is calling for a peace conference. As 400 Russian troops prepare to join the UN forces around Sarajevo, 140 British Coldstream Guards are today being deployed at the capital, part of a contingent of 300 due there. The British troops are just one part of a force which will double the UN military presence in Sarajevo. Jane McCormick, GMTV News.
A number of incendiary bombs have exploded overnight in central London. The firebombs went off in 7 shops in the West End. Anti-terrorist officers are investigating, but it's not yet known who planted the devices. The first fire started in a record shop next to a busy nightclub at 2:30 a.m. The blaze came hours after an unexploded incendiary device was found inside the shop and diffused. Fires broke out in West End branches of Topshop, Henny's, Liberty's and 2 Burton's clothing stores. Another grocery shop was badly damaged. The fires come on the day John Major and Irish Premier Albert Reynolds meet to discuss peace in Northern Ireland, just 1 week before Sinn Féin's annual conference in Dublin. We have this report from Alexander Anstine.
With no let-up in the violence in Northern Ireland, Albert Reynolds and John Major have much to talk about. Arriving in London last night, Reynolds was optimistic.
We're looking forward to the opportunity to assess the progress on the Downing Street Declaration and indeed to assess where the talks process is at.
Today's meeting will be the first between the two leaders since their historic Ulster Peace Declaration last December. It's being held because of Sinn Féin's refusal to respond officially to the initiative. The timing of the meeting may prove vital, coming just 1 week before Sinn Féin's annual conference. In the countdown to the conference, both leaders hope to increase pressure on the hardline Republican movement. Hopes were high when Major last met Reynolds, but the violence didn't go away. Last week saw increasing terrorist activity and the first IRA murder this year. This may have dampened hopes of a ceasefire in Northern Ireland, but the message to come out of today's meeting is the pressure will be kept up on Sinn Féin and the IRA to support the peace process. Alexander Anstey, GMTV News.
Torvill Dean's dream of another Olympic ice dance victory got off to a shaky start last night. They came third behind 2 Russian couples in the first compulsory dance, after Christopher Dean stumbled slightly during one turn. Last night's event counts for only 20% of the total marks. The final event is on Monday. Michael Jackson returns to the limelight later today for his first performance since the end of his world tour, cancelled amidst accusations of child abuse. For the first time in 20 years, the Jackson family will appear in public together to present Lifetime Achievements Awards to celebrities at a charity event in Las Vegas. Only LaToya Jackson won't be appearing in the show. Antiguan police, assisted by Scotland Yard detectives, have arrested a man in connection with the shootings of 2 Britons and 2 Americans on a yacht in the Caribbean 3 weeks ago. The man led officers to a site on the island of Barbuda where travellers' checks and personal papers belonging to the victims were found buried. Several other suspects are still being sought. Time now for a look at the week's main news stories. An Arctic weather caused chaos across the country. In the Cairngorm Mountains, a climber was found alive after spending 2 nights in temperatures as low as -27 degrees. But first, Bosnia, and hopes were raised that airstrikes against Serb positions around Sarajevo would not be necessary after Russia's intervention in the conflict.
The decision to send 60 specialist British troops came as Bosnia's Serbs stepped up their withdrawal of heavy weapons from around Sarajevo. Russian diplomatic and military intervention appears to have convinced their longtime Serbian allies to respond to NATO's deadline. Government ministers suggest John Major encouraged the Russians to act when he met Boris Yeltsin in Moscow this week. Last night, Foreign Secretary Douglas Hurd said there was now a chance the war could end.
There is now a real prospect of a nightmare coming to an end. That's what we should fasten our eyes on and work in the next few days and weeks to make sure that happens.
But the government's refusal to meet the demands from Britain's UN commander in Bosnia for 3,000 extra troops is still prompting criticism.
This government has now to get behind its commander in the field and do what needs to be done to make sure he has the resources he needs to do the job we've asked him to do.
The chance of peace in Sarajevo without airstrikes has raised hopes at Westminster that the UN may soon be able to restart humanitarian aid convoys, the peacekeeping role most MPs want British forces to perform. Gavin Partington, GMTV News.
Chaos on the roads is what the emergency services fear this morning. Conditions are treacherous right across the country, but worst affected are Cornwall, Cardiff and central southern England. Dartmoor was one of the coldest places, with temperatures down to -8. Snowplows and gritters have been out, but motorists are being advised not to make non-essential journeys. Elderly people trying to keep warm are already worrying about the addition of VAT to fuel bills in April.
You've got to save the money. If you haven't got no money, you wouldn't be able to pay it, would you? I mean, you have to do away with those things that you can't have.
Additional severe weather payments are only made after 7 days of 0 or sub-zero temperatures. Labour has called for this restriction to be waived. Charities say 750,000 people are at risk from the cold.
They are at risk of getting a cold-related illness of some description, which can lead to a fatality. And given that we have this bad record already, any additional risk to elderly people worries us terribly.
The Department of Social Security says it sees no reason to change the way cold weather payments are made. The 7-day sub-zero rule still applies. Milder weather is forecast from tomorrow, so it's unlikely the elderly will receive any extra help during this cold spell. Sue Saville, GMTV News.
Found alive and well after 40 hours lost in the mountains. And amazingly, Jacqueline Greaves was only suffering from minor frostbite. In this morning's papers, the 53-year-old grandmother tells of her determination not to be beaten, of how she told the mountain, "You won't get me." She admits that a couple of times she thought it might all be over, and relives the 2 nights she spent in the hills where temperatures plunged to -27 degrees. A combined search by mountain rescue teams, police and RAF helicopters ended successfully, with Mrs. Greaves being flown to hospital. Surgeons have been treating her for frostbite on her fingers, but otherwise all she needed was rest. But reports that she has sold her story have prompted criticism. Scottish Minister Sir Hector Munro called it a poor reward for those who volunteered to save her life. The rescue operation may have cost at least £70,000, but unlike so many in the Scottish mountains, this one had a happy ending. James Rogers, GMTV News.
Now a look at the weather. Dry, cold and quite sunny over eastern Britain today, but western areas will be rather more cloudy with a little light rain at first. This afternoon winds will strengthen in the west and heavy rain will spread to much of Ireland, reaching southwest England and Wales this evening. Feeling rather cold in the east, temperatures only 3 to 5 Celsius, a little milder in the west. Tonight rain and sleet will move east to central areas of Britain and turn to snow, particularly on the hills. The east should stay mostly dry. Drier weather will spread across Ireland to western Britain later. Temperatures near freezing in the east, but a milder 4 or 5 Celsius in the west. Cold and wintry on Sunday with sleet and snow in main central and eastern areas, milder in the west with sunshine and showers over Ireland. This brighter weather will reach southwest England and Wales later in the day. Temperatures ranging from a mild 9 Celsius in the west to only 1 or 2 Celsius in the east. That's it from the newsroom. Next on GMTV, Eat Your Words.